From a war-torn nation on the verge of collapse, we go on the trail of the world's most wanted human trafficker.
Did they see the people who organized it for them?
From his desert hideaways in the depths of the Sahara to his secret bases on the Mediterranean coast, we expose the inner workings of an international criminal network.
This man has been paying prison guards so that they can carry on smuggling them into Europe.
But with the traffickers operating in one of the most dangerous places on Earth,
We literally say, expect beheading.
Expect to be beheaded.
Yeah.
we ask if there's any realistic chance of stopping this trade in human misery. Lampedusa in the southern Mediterranean. For many years, the island has been a popular destination for wealthy holidaymakers. But more recently, this has been the scene of suffering, pain, and death.
It was here that hundreds of men, women, and children all perished in one of the worst maritime catastrophes in modern European history. The circumstances around the tragedy drew worldwide condemnation and triggered an international manhunt.
It was in the early hours of October the 3rd, 2013, that the Coast Guard in Lampedusa launched a full-scale rescue operation after a fishing vessel packed with African migrants caught fire and sank.
Hanno cominciato a portare I primi cadaveri. Li abbiamo messi tutti qua in fila.
When we first started to bring out the bodies, we put them all along here. They were all lined up. 111 corpses. I was worried about what I was going to find. The very first body bag I opened contained a small child, a tiny little baby.
The final death toll, 366 people, mainly from Eritrea. The enormity of the crime demanded an immediate response, and the Italian government turned to Jerry Ferrara. He's a veteran of the long war against the Sicilian mafia, so an obvious choice to take on the criminals behind the fatal shipment.
It was so big what happened, with almost more than 300 people died, and the clear existence of a network behind the organization of these ships, of these trips, that we decided to use the typical investigative approach that we used in the past in a mafia crime that gave us great success.
The Italian investigators employed the same skills that they've used through the years to take on the mafia, and that involved covert surveillance, witness protection schemes, but perhaps most importantly, telephone intercepts. And the result is this. Nearly 700 pages of evidence. It is the most comprehensive inquiry ever produced into people smuggling from North Africa to Europe.
Within days of setting up their investigation, codenamed Operation Glauco, the task force made an important breakthrough. This footage of the wreck, filmed by police divers, captures the last moments of those who didn't survive.
الو
ياس
ايوه
نعم اديني.
You're listening to a telephone call intercepted by investigators between those who organized the shipment.
جون
Kami salam ya.
Jaber Muslim, kami.
Andai mo alhamdulillah ko bahan negara lain ko ini jadi adil ko dah ini adil kami amlah hasil tahakun ini malah di orang tahu kan.
The conversation between two key members of the smuggling gang is remarkably callous. One is a Sudanese based in Khartoum. He's talking to his boss, this man, an Ethiopian called Amias Germe. He's now been identified as the most ruthless people smuggler on the continent.
It's very famous all over Africa. Everybody knows him, but at the same time, it's also very difficult to identify him. So it's a very weird thing because everybody have his number, have his phone number, have the number of his of a person working with him, knows where he lives, but nobody until now identify or arrest him.
Amias is so elusive, no known photograph of him exists. Police have to rely on this photo fit, compiled from eyewitnesses he has trafficked. Despite this initial breakthrough, Jerry Ferrara's investigation has met with only limited success. In the past few weeks, his team has arrested and indicted a dozen members of the people smuggling gang. But these are just the foot soldiers, bit players in a vast international network. Amias himself, along with his most ruthless lieutenant, an Eritrean called Merad Medani, remain at large. Operating thousands of miles away, far beyond the reach of European justice. Kufra, in the heart of the Sahara Desert. For centuries, it was a staging post on the ancient slave route to the Mediterranean. Today, Kufra is the entry point into Libya for contraband from all over Africa. Outsiders are not welcome here. There are several criminal gangs operating. Kidnappings are rife, and another multi-million-dollar business. And we are prime targets. As lone Westerners here, we stand out, and we move locations constantly to avoid detection. We start our search for the people traffickers at a detention center on the outskirts of Kufra.
Salam alaikum. Salam. 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 Salam.
Inside are young women, most barely teenagers. Like the Lampedusa victims, they've fled one of the most brutal regimes on earth.
All of you from Eritrea? Everyone Eritrea? Okay.
Their journey cut short after a crash in the desert, and a number of them are badly hurt.
And then the one bus went three times. Three times. What happened to the other two? The other two buses? They were okay?
Their vehicle was written off when the Libyan army chased the smugglers who'd ferried them across the border from Sudan.
That's broken. Okay. So why is it all the way up here? Has she broken her back? Internal. Okay. Can I see? Can I see? It's okay. It's okay. Yo, that looks bad. It's painful. Yeah?
At this early stage in their attempt to reach Europe, the girls told me how their families had already handed over a fortune to the traffickers.
Sudan to Libya. How much transfer? Yeah.
$1 plus $500.
1,500. So per person. 1,500, 1,500, 1,500 single. Can I show her a couple of pictures and see whether she recognizes these people? Do you recognize?
الأسامي هذين هل مروا عليك الصور هذه؟ هل شفتيها؟ الأشخاص هذول هل شفتيهم؟ هذول مهربين رغم.
ممكن نشوفهم الناس أنا ما بعرف.
لكن هذول ما قالت ممكن. She said maybe someone know them.
Maybe they'll know, or this guy. You recognize him?
They look like.
Okay. Show your friends. See if they recognize.
شوفي كذا وريهم بس
The photo fit of Amias causes many of them to hesitate, as does the picture of their fellow Eritrean Mered Madani.
Did they see the people who organized it for them?
They said no.
This huddle of frightened young women weren't about to jeopardize their already desperate situation even further. But we had learnt a little bit more about how the traffickers operate and the huge fortunes they're making. Coming up, we witness the chaos of a war-torn country on the verge of collapse. Ideal conditions that allow criminal gangs to flourish. Our search for the world's most wanted people smuggler has taken us to Kufra in southern Libya. Here we found a group of frightened young Eritrean girls in the town's detention center. Their stories of how they were trafficked provide just a small piece in what is a much larger jigsaw.
We know that Amias' gang was in touch with migrants' families from a string of countries, from America, Israel, Germany, Italy, and the UK too. And we know that those families were transferring huge amounts from all these countries to the gang, making it a truly global criminal enterprise.
These men are on the front line of Libya's battle against the people traffickers. They're in charge of the region's border and immigration control. And together they help devise a plan to halt the smugglers. And this is it. The Great Wall of Kufra stretches 150 kilometers and circles the town. But it has some serious design flaws.
Like this, like this, like this. And look here. I look here like this, and look here like this, and look here like this, and car.
Within a few months, the drifting sands of the Sahara have made a mockery of their defenses. And the two men readily admit that they're fighting a losing battle.
The people smugglers here are in total control. They have all the money and all the power, the fastest vehicles and the latest weaponry. Worse, if they are caught, there is never any justice. They get off scot-free and carry on.
And for the West, and all their promises to help fight the smugglers, there is nothing but contempt.
We've been over for talks in Europe many times, including one sponsored by the Americans. But nothing ever came of it. We've been invited back for more discussions. But we're not going to go, because we know that it's just that, all talk.
Out there in this vast expanse of sand, the smugglers have hidden camps, stashed full of vital supplies. full of food and water for the migrants. The smugglers themselves are not only heavily armed, they also have the latest technology. They have GPS equipment as well as night vision goggles to help them. And the Libyan authorities, who are undermanned and outgunned, are simply too terrified to take on these criminal gangs.
The migrants who make the long journey to Europe say they have two seas to cross. The Mediterranean, but first the desert. The survivors of the Lampedusa shipwreck told the police how they were kidnapped by armed gangs and taken to houses owned by Hermias and his network. Here, many were tortured and the women raped. They were held in captivity until their relatives paid more money, a ransom of up to $3,000 to free them. The next stage of our journey took us 1,000 kilometers north, to the very heart of a region torn apart by perpetual fighting. Benghazi is on the front line of a country split into several warring factions, but the city is still a crucial staging point for the gang's people smuggling operation.
This is a country which has been pretty much at war and fighting for the last 4 years. Militia against militia, east against west. In this case, it's fighting Islamic State extremists. They are the perfect anarchic conditions to allow criminal gangs to flourish, and that's what's led to this explosion in the smuggling of people.
Dug in, and often within sight, is a band of die-hard Islamist foreign fighters, veterans of conflicts across Africa and the Middle East.
And why does he think they're still here? Because they're quite outnumbered now in this particular area.
قالت لك عايش كيش تتوقع انهم قاعدين صامتين هنا وهم شويه انتوا اكثر منهم واجد ليش قاعدين؟
لا هم طبعا هم عندهم العقيده بتاع التشبث بالارض هذه.
They have the mindset of the martyr. They want to die.
To stay until they die.
Yes, they want to die.
As the soldiers push back the Islamic State fighters, we make our way through the buildings they've been occupying.
Streets literally say, expect beheading.
Expect to be beheaded.
This used to be the local court, a centre for justice before the descent into anarchy.
They think that the Islamic State extremists were probably here for a few months, maybe up to 6 months. They totally trashed the place and tried to turn it into their own Sharia court.
The rise of IS in Libya has meant that the migrants crossing the country face another deadly threat. In the past few months, the extremists have posted several videos online glorifying their brutality. a group of Egyptian Christians is paraded on the country's Mediterranean coast shortly before being slaughtered. The video was used to terrorize a group of Eritreans intercepted by IS just outside Benghazi. The group included this man. We're calling him Ayob. He's still too terrified to reveal his identity.
They stopped us in the evening at around 5 o'clock. They asked us who was Christian and who was Muslim. I was terrified and I had to pretend. I can speak Arabic, so I listened to the Muslims talking about their religion. I denied I was Christian and managed to pass myself off as a Muslim too.
Ayob's plan worked. He was released. The friends he left behind were not so fortunate. They were beheaded like those in this video.
I don't believe these people are human. They say they are Muslims. They are not Muslims. I don't believe God created them. They are so vile.
Despite the bloodshed and amid all the fighting and chaos, nothing gets in the way of the people smuggling racket. Even during the height of the fighting around Benghazi, the phone intercepts picked up by the Italian authorities revealed the Amayas gang was still shipping people through the city, including young children.
Hello.
The going rate for this stage of the journey, another $1,700, with no guarantee of any migrant ever reaching their final destination. Next, our search for more clues takes us to Tripoli, where the migrants tell us of their living hell in a place where the smugglers operate with total freedom. Journey in search of the people smugglers has taken us hundreds of kilometers across the Sahara to the outskirts of war-torn Benghazi and now to the coastal plains along the Libyan Mediterranean shore. Here, the threat of kidnap is so high, most embassies have left the country. This part of Libya is now the epicenter of the human trafficking business. And there's no outside monitoring of the overcrowded detention centers. So we've been told that we have to go in, and they've given us this as protection because they don't know who's got infections or what infections they might have. And also, a number of them have been here for many months and the smell is overpowering. Very good reception from them. Over here, to your right. Wow. They are throwing stuff at us.
Come here quickly. For several months, and the few who managed to torture us were saying they just wanted freedom, they wanted help. Someone's managed to get out.
He's determined, despite the risk of repercussions, to tell us that in the long months he's been held here, he's been beaten on a regular basis. In the aftermath of the riot, we managed to speak to one of the detainees, yet another young woman from Eritrea.
Does she know anything about the people who organise the boats, who organise the smuggling?
Her answer, the gang members were Sudanese and in particular an Ethiopian, matches the descriptions of Ermias Germay and some of his lieutenants.
Have you seen, were any of these, did you recognise any of these people?
Again, a hesitation.
You're not seeing this man? And don't recognise either of them. Are you worried about giving any information about these people? Did they tell you not to talk to the authorities or to people like me about who they were?
In this abusive world where the smugglers determine their victims' fate, silence is often the safest option. The authorities in Tripoli in western Libya rule only part of this fractured country. This gathering in the city's Martyrs Square is mourning fighters killed in what seems like a never-ending civil war against the East. The government here is an Islamist-dominated coalition and has no international recognition. And Tripoli's pariah status plays right into the hands of the people smugglers. Abu Salim is one of the city's notorious neighborhoods, a no-go area for outsiders. It's also the headquarters of the international people smuggling operation run by Ermias. It was calls made from here that provide much of the evidence against him. In the one directly linking him to the Lampedusa sinking, he blames the migrants for the tragedy.
أنا كلت مركوي كجبرة حسبكم سموني هيك قالوا بيروح يكتعوز أنا لك كيلومني.
And the Italian police files contain much more than just the details of how the gang operate. They also provide damning evidence of widespread corruption across the Libyan judicial system. During the course of their investigation, the Italian police tapped the phones of all Emaus's senior lieutenants. The activities of one member, the Eritrean Mered Madani, caused the Italian investigators real concern. Madani was recorded bragging about how he bribes the guards in detention centers to release their captives over to his control. The gang then holds them to ransom, extorting money from desperate relatives who pay up for the next stage of their journey. The punishment for failure to cooperate at any stage is severe.
They break my leg. They push me into the water. They ask me, I have to pay the money. I told them I have to pay. This is the amount I have to pay. They beat me. They beat us in the streets.
We put these serious allegations to the most senior government official in Libya dealing with people smuggling. We started by asking him if he knew anything about the Italian investigation.
Have you heard of Operation Glauco?
No.
Have you heard of Operation Glauco 2?
No.
Has he heard of this man? His name is Emaus Germay. This man is one of the most wanted in Europe and identified by the Italian authorities as one of the key people smugglers based in Tripoli.
I don't know anything about this particular individual you speak of, as to whether he may or may not operate out of Tripoli. It is impossible to say. The security situation is so bad in Libya, we would have no idea whether he would be based here or in another country.
We then presented him with the extensive evidence gathered by the Italian police during their phone tapping operation.
This man has been operating also in Libya, going into detention centers like this one and paying prison guards to release these people so that they can carry on smuggling them into Europe.
There is absolutely no way that this man could come into one of our detention centers and bribe the guards. But if he was doing this, then the Italians should have shared their evidence with us, so it could be stopped immediately.
That seems highly unlikely. The evidence shows despite the large amounts of cash being handed over, along every step of the way, these people are humiliated, beaten and abused. And now they are the forgotten inmates of a corrupt system. Their only hope of release is yet further exploitation by the smuggling gangs who operate here without any fear of reprisal. Next, we travel on to the traffickers' final outpost. And join the men struggling to stem the tide of migrants leaving the shores of Africa. Zawara has for centuries had a reputation as the home of the country's finest fishing fleet. But the city on the northwest coastline is the nearest point from Libya to Europe. And that means Zawara is now the #1 launching stage for migrants leaving Africa. Zawara's newfound infamy as a den for criminals and smugglers is one the Berber community here deeply resents. The smuggling networks and those who run them are all well known to the authorities. In an unusually candid interview, the city's chief of police agreed that there was a problem with people trafficking. He was adamant that the issue was not just a local one, but symptomatic of a country in deep crisis.
Tell me, why are you finding it so hard to crack down on what's happening here in Zawara?
The main reasons are a lack of resources, manpower, firearms and equipment. And there's one other thing: corruption. Even when someone is arrested, they have enough money to bribe officials and get away. And because we don't have a proper system of government in Libya, it makes it even harder for us.
Zawara's chief of police doesn't deny that the people smugglers operate on his patch. But he blames outsiders and points us to the city's old town, another no-go area. The Operation Glauco files confirmed that Amias and his gang have what they refer to as an operational base in Zawara. It is here in the maze of back streets that the migrants are hidden by the gang. They wait, often for weeks at a time, for the right moment. The conditions for the crossings have to be just right.
In the 12 months after the Lampedusa sinking, the Italian police have gathered evidence which shows that the gang shipped 5,478 migrants from these shores. Now, they were charging them between $1,500 and $2,000 American dollars per person. So by our calculations, the gang made in the region of $10 million last year for just the trip from here to Sicily alone.
We were invited to join the Zawaran Coast Guard, anxious to show us the problems they face. They patrolled this stretch of coast right down to Tunisian territorial waters, some 80 kilometers to the west. It is the busiest expanse of water for migrant smugglers in the whole of North Africa. But the Zawarans have just 2 patrol boats at their disposal. Their methods of detection are at the most basic level. And their rates of interception are pitifully small.
We've been out the bulk of the night, going up and down the Libyan coastline, and we've not seen anything. It's hardly surprising, given that this is just one boat operating in virtual darkness. They're just using torches to try and pinpoint refugee boats. It really does illustrate the utter hopelessness of their situation.
It's not a surprise that yet again the smugglers have escaped undetected. Within hours of setting off from Libya, their human cargo is in European waters and somebody else's problem. Our Our return to Lampedusa coincided with the arrival of 250 migrants rescued by the Italian Coast Guard. Once again, in the forefront of the reception committee was Dr. Pietro Bartolo. It was Dr. Bartolo who treated the wounded and traumatized survivors of the 2013 shipwreck, for which Omaez Guermey and his gang were responsible. In the past 2 decades, the doctor has treated more than 250,000 who've landed on this tiny island, and today he is busier than ever.
After Lampedusa, after the terrible tragedy and the huge number of people who died at that Lampedusa incident in October 2013, they promised things would change. Has anything changed?
Il problema esiste, lo vediamo. Fra mezz'ora arriva un altro sbarco.
This is a problem that still exists. It won't be long before yet another boat arrives here today. So no, the issue is unresolved. It's true, Europe and the Italians have had some initiatives, but my personal opinion, the solution lies not here, but over there, in Libya.
European politicians insist the best way of curbing the migrant crisis is by smashing the gangs and their networks. But 18 months into the most detailed investigation into human trafficking, it's hit a brick wall.
Do you even know who to contact now?
Do you want an honest answer?
I want a very honest answer.
we don't know how to contact. There is no official reference for this.
Evidence we gathered at every stage of our journey through Libya points to a string of insurmountable problems. The traffickers continue to ferry thousands of people across Libya's unprotected borders. The constant fighting and unrest inside the country has created chaos and confusion, which the smuggling networks are exploiting to the full. We found the gangs are aided by a corrupt system, and they operate with impunity. Despite the mountain of evidence against one of the kingpins, knowing where his bases are, his smuggling routes, even his telephone numbers, the investigators finally conceded to us their work may have been in vain.
Omaez knows that by now in Libya we cannot get any kind of cooperation. So he knows that if the situation in Libya remains how it is now, probably we'll never arrest him.
Already this year, more than 50,000 migrants have arrived in Italy. Most of them transported across Libya by traffickers who continue to make millions. And no one is any closer to stopping this trade in human misery.